AI. I was at an executive presentation yesterday to the C-suite group, right? We have our chief head guy, we've got the creative marketing team, we've got operations in there. I take time to actually go through all of the tacticals, right? Of what is AI, like what it can do, what it can't do, how are you using it in your daily life? Training off of the crit model, right? This is this is how to revolutionize your prompts so you don't get, replaced by AI. What else do we cover normally? The specific, engines that are available. Once they get the kind of framework of what things can happen in terms of just normal prompts, we move into the exciting world of custom GPTs and Google Gems and Claude projects. So, taking those kind of basic fundamental pieces on up to something that is more routine, and we can use it and specialize these kind of experts, right, in terms of bots. And then we get into like the okay, let's get into the use cases. And there's plenty of use cases out there, right? And they're like, can you just build it? I'm like, dude, we just talked about the whole thing, like how to actually go do it and how simple it is and being able to architect it and then tweak those things. Maybe you copy and paste them and build out specializations of them, or so it's there. And then like all of a sudden it's like, well, can you do this? And you're like, yeah, I can, but we just spent all this time and effort training it. And plus, you can do this, right? Because we have some clients that just don't have the budgets for the consulting work to kind of push things through a little bit. That's the part that actually requires some real work. The top end education, understanding what's available and how to do it, it's pretty easy. And then you get into the actual like, okay, creating the stuff, right? So in this case here, even just developing a company profile, right, with resources that are there requires the actual work, right? So net net is a little bit despondent. It's not the first time I've heard that, right? Going through the stuff, but it's a repeating pattern over and over and over again. People aren't as excited about AI as I am about solving problems. I look to it to solve every single problem first. If I can use AI to actually make it better, faster, cheaper, smarter, whatever it is, I often use AI and I think within that mode. That's not the normal modus operandi for a lot of individuals. So I take a step back every once in a while and go, you know what? God has gifted me with this kind of ability to kind of see this stuff a little bit and enough business experience to be able to tie those two things together. So anyway, today's episode is kind of delving into a little bit of the human side of it and why that doesn't work. So this is a pretty extensive problem. I apparently kind of underestimated, right? So Deloitte, it used to be Deloitte and Touche, but I think it's gone away. So they released in January here the state of AI in the enterprise, and they found that 90% of executives have deployed AI agents or pilots, but only 14 to 20% have actually embedded them into core operations. That to me seems kind of crazy, right? I think if you've done this right, you see it, you see that work's getting done like in real time. Like you run it, you can obviously see that things are either working and not working, or saving you time or not saving you time. I'm not exactly sure how we get a number like that, but all I can say is it's a bigger problem. So there's three kind of underlying, let's say, layers to this larger problem. The first one is called the executive paradox, and the executive paradox, and this is where kind of going off and taking the launch pad from the statistic into something more tactical for us and our purposes here. But the C-suite leaders are paid to be visionaries, right? They're not technicians. So similarly, asking a CEO to go ahead and actually configure a Claude project might be a little bit difficult. It's kind of like asking the pilot, like mid flight, to go ahead and kind of refine the jet fuel. Like it's just not gonna happen. They see the value, but the cognitive load is just really, really hard and difficult to kind of overcome. So that the technical interface is just a step backward for them mentally and productivity. So the executive paradox is definitely a real thing. I saw it yesterday. Definitely understand it. There's also a thing called the shadow risk. So this is the second one, right? Where you just kind of get exhausted as an executive or a leader, and you're like, you know what? We just want it to work. That's all we want. We want it to work, right? And so what ends up happening is it usually gets pushed down to a team or a specific member in there, and where these kludgy tools kind of get locked together, and they're leaky. They admit it basically, ultimately, that AI is kind of just a show than it actually is actual performance. And we kind of see that with like renewal licenses for like Copilot and stuff like that, where you may buy 1,000 licenses and there's like 7 people that actually logged in. There's only like 1 or 2 people actually use it on a regular basis. That story is very, very common now, which is nuts. The third one is an ROI disconnect, right? Where individual productivity is up. So you have like serious stars who are using this stuff and maybe using automations and things like that from Make or N8N or Zapier even, right? Creating, creating their own apps even off of this stuff and using it to get work done. But the ROI is lagging for the organization. So basically you've got these stars, but the organization just doesn't have that connective tissue to actually benefit or to understand the benefit of it. So those are the three kind of layers in there in terms of the state of the state, right? So what can we do about that? So as I was sitting in my meeting yesterday, I'm like, they need an internal person. They need like an AI captain, right? Somebody to take up the trumpet. And yes, you hear the executives get the understanding, they know it's important, but then there's somebody internal, if it's not an external consultant, right, that comes in, or a group of consultants that come in and kind of help just build those things literally at the tactical level so that they basically can get it to just work. They've done the audit. They understand how systems and access is there. They understand what SaaS applications the teams are using, the internal teams are using, and then they basically go ahead and just kind of build it. And then just as if you were using a development for a software company, right? You're paying for that work to get done. Okay. You need an AI captain to drive that home if you're going to be doing that internally. So that is really, really, really important. It shifts that labor off of expensive C-suite plate while keeping that implementation internal to the organization, right, at a lower cost. The other approach could be basically to hire a full-time or hire a consultant, right, to go in and be able to do that. Now, a lot of our projects tend to be a little bit more longer term and embedded with clients. However, you know what? We can do an AI foundation sprint, right? So kind of like yesterday, there's 3 to 5 use cases from team member, basically the CEO, we have the COO, and we have the CMO. We have identified already 3 to 5 use cases for each one of them. It's just going in, doing that assessment, getting access to the tools, and just building it. And that way, work actually gets done and you're ready to roll. So that's the second option. 1, have an internal AI captain. 2, do a AI foundational sprint where we just kind of identify those things and move forward. The third one is kind of on us. Since we're kind of seeing a regular pattern over and over and over again, there's like templates that we can do because we see the same things. Let's take marketing, for example, creating content for a blog, right? Getting social media content out there. Like there's these templates that we see and have built automations literally for that we could literally spin off for organizations. So that's like a third option that you might want to try and take care of or take advantage of. And then the fourth one is kind of interesting. It's called an accountability audit, right? Where we come in, we kind of do an assessment, and we've done this before on several different kind of occasions where we do that audit. We go in, we look at what you're doing manually, and we say, okay, well, that's going to cost, let's say, $9,000 a month, right? In terms of you working or your team working to do X thing, right? That we can now replace with automation. So we can actually do that accountability audit for you, identify those use cases, tie a specific value to it, and then basically we would just basically we'd build it for you, and then we would just we prove it works because you can literally see these automations. Like you build it this week and next week it's running. You can see what work it took off your plate that you no longer have to do. So instead of you doing it for the next 3 months, right, or to 12 months, that automation can run. So what our agency would do is basically after this accountability audit, we'd say, since before we'd even engage that, we would do that audit for you complimentary. We then go ahead and figure out what the cost or value of that is to you. We'd say, instead of, you just pay us 3 months. You are going to spend that money anyway on headcount or resources or whatever the case may be to get that done. We're just going to take 3 months of that. The automation's completely built. We'll even support it for 12 months, but we'll take 3 months of that savings. Remember, you were going to spend that anyway in terms of human resources and effort. You might as well make your job a heck of a lot easier, make the output way better, have way more fun, and get down to actually doing things that you can do that AI can't do. So those would be the 4 essential steps I'd like to be able to present to you in a way to help just executives like get this AI thing working for their companies, because it's happening time and time again. We just see, okay, we get kind of like the engines are firing, right? But there's nothing that's really occurring for it. And we're seeing that in the numbers. And there's just no reason why that should be, especially with AI being as accountable. We set up those use cases. The proof is in the pudding. We just get work done. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you guys think I missed anything, you want to challenge me in some of these thoughts, you want to comment, plus positive, negative, doesn't really matter. Share it with other people. Look, this is a mission that we can take advantage of as human beings to automate some of the stuff in life that we just simply don't want to do, or computers can do way better than us, and really get down to focusing on humans, human interaction, building and advancing those things that AI could do that we are now elevated to do at a larger scale, or way better in terms of complexity and interesting things. So, love to hear your feedback. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of the day. God bless. Take care.